Hey, welcome to a screenwriter's journey. It's day 122, and a funny thing happened on the day to 122. I recorded it, and then I started recording day 123, and I realized that it was about 80% duplicate. So somehow I had duplicated the file, and I was doing 123, and I'm saying, wow, this seems very, very familiar. And it was. Anyways, what I'm doing here on day 122, and I think I talked about this a little on 121. Frankly, I'm floundering a bit, much like the fish of the same name, trying to work out this first section, trying to think about showing Holly more when she's younger instead of just jumping straight ahead like had happened in the previous script. And then we meet her when she's in her mid 30s and she's at the CrossFit gym or at the gym or whatever and talks to Paul. That was the draft that I had thought was done. And so I realized after getting comments and after doing a bunch of work on the ideas document that I've shared somewhat, that, and I should add also rereading or looking at the Save the Cat Strikes Back book, which I literally keep right here with me, that I didn't really set it up. I had the opening set up, but I didn't set up the story in terms of showing Holly sort of in her normal everyday life, both then, 12 years ago, and now. Um, and it's really something that I didn't think was missing or I didn't think mattered was missing. But until you see a character in his or her normal life, you won't know, or maybe you don't appreciate the change that they undergo in as they move on. You know, there's the catalyst, something happens, it sparks them into action, they have the debate, and then they take a proactive move into Act Two, and then you have all the other stuff. And I think in the previous version, I mean, we showed it. The script showed her frustration with her job and that she wanted to move on, but I don't, I don't think it worked as well as it should have. Those are the birds in the background announcing that it's 2 o'clock Eastern time. So what I'm trying to do here is work in some conversations to sort of say this was a typical day in Holly's life. Although, having said that, if it's a typical day, nobody wants to see it. So that's kind of the dichotomy, or that's sort of the challenge, is how do you make something look like, well, this is her everyday life and this is how she's acting when the cameras aren't on, but at the same time make it something that isn't just dull and boring, her sitting at her desk doing paperwork or, jogging around a track or something. So you obviously have to construct something to make it a little more cinematically interesting. But how to do that? Well, that's what I've been working on for the past several days. And I'm just mired in this part of the script because I feel like, as I've said before, when I work off an outline or ideas or synopsis or treatment or whatever you want to call it, I never seem to get as deep into the characters as I do when I'm writing dialogue. And I would imagine that's true for most people. Because when you're sort of commenting on them third person and saying, here's what I want them to do, and, boy meets girl, boy, whatever. But until you get those 2 or 3 or 4 people together and they start having a dialogue and you see their character come out, it just doesn't work that well. And the other thing, that was A, and I believe B is, that was a long time ago when I started that thought. A is that, and B is, gosh, this is embarrassing. But you know my rules. I take us live and I don't re-record unless I totally screw up. I think the other thing is that you have to write it to know if it works or not. If it doesn't work, that's fine. And sometimes it's better if it doesn't work. That's probably a lie, but if it doesn't work, at least you know you tried and you're writing something. But that's really not my B that I started in mind with when I said my A point. So sorry about that. So you can see what I'm doing here. I've got her coworker, and we're learning something about Holly's, dating history, which has been basically either non-existent or not good. And then we hear through Katina her advice on not becoming involved in the cases that they are working beyond a professional level. So I'm just going over and over and over this. And trust me, today, day 122 will not be the only day I do that. So it's not really frustrating as I'm writing it, but then as I look back on it a month later or even the next day or two, it really gets and got frustrating because I just couldn't get past this. I haven't been able to find something that is a springboard. Maybe that was the other thing I was going to say. Once you get your setup, you have your springboard. But if you have a terrible setup, it's sort of like a diving board with no bounce on it. If you've got a board there, but you can't get any spring off it and it can't launch you into the story, then, it's just a boring start. And there's so many scripts that I've read, including my own over the years, where the first 5, 10, 15 pages, it's just like, what is even going on? What are you setting up? It's just, there's stuff happening, but there's no momentum being built. There's no, you're not laying the foundation for anything. Things are just happening. So that's obviously what I'm trying to avoid and trying to fix, because the better your setup, obviously, the more invested you can get the reader and then eventually the audience in the characters, the more they're going to keep turning the pages. And, the less likely they're going to get up from their TV or the movie theater to go get a popcorn refill or use the restroom or something. And that is truly what movie making is about, keeping people in their chairs, whether it's a movie chair or a seat, or if it's at home or wherever they're watching it. And when you think about it, it's a super interesting psychology of think about it when you watch, especially a movie. TV shows are different because you come knowing the characters and blah, blah, blah. But when you watch a movie, unless it's a sequel or something, there's a certain point where either you lose interest in it, the believability factor doesn't work for you. There's some tipping point and you just, and you turn the channel or you turn it off or whatever. Of course, if you've gone to the movies, very rarely will you leave a movie because you paid good money for it. I don't know if I've ever walked out on a movie, maybe once. But you don't have to walk out on a movie. You can mentally walk out and check out and, just start thinking of other stuff or literally close your eyes and go to sleep. So as we write, we always have to be thinking, as challenging as it may be, is this the line of dialogue that's going to make someone turn the channel? Is this the scene that's going to make someone say, ho hum, not enough has happened in these first 5, 6, 7 minutes, and I don't care what happens. I'm not invested in the story. So as I write this, I'm not saying that I'm literally thinking all of this as I'm writing it, but it definitely goes through your mind as you reflect, and then especially as you read it back and you're wondering, is this good enough for me? And of course, it's hard to be your own hardest critic, but you really have to be, especially the more you write, the more critical you have to be of your own writing, both when you're writing it and then when you come back to it a day or a week, or in this case, about 6 weeks, 5 weeks later. Because if you're not, you're going to send it out to someone, and then 9 times out of 10 or more than that, you're just going to get ripped for what you wrote because it wasn't ready to send out. And certainly that has happened to me. I mean, it's obviously happened to some extent in this one. I didn't get totally ripped, but the guy who read it obviously was not a fan, and I really respect and value his opinion. And so this has led me to going on, I don't know, 16, 17 days of rewriting and just being in the quagmire, so to speak. So, I mean, even now you can see, and I've not hardly commenting at all on what I'm writing here, but I've started on page 5, I think, and I'm on page 6, and I've probably spent in real time probably 45 minutes-ish just trying to make something work. I think right there I was checking on some facts about the U.S. Marshals, maybe the wording of something, or I don't know why I did that. Now watch what I do here. I mean, it takes me 4 times to get out that sentence. And this, I don't know, this doesn't work at all. I'll tell you right now. So I wouldn't feel bad. I wouldn't blame you if you skipped ahead to day 199. No. So what I'm trying to get across here in the script is there any policy within the Marshal Service that says, hey, don't get involved with the people that we save or we rescue or you come in contact with? And they're really, I mean, I don't know that you could marry one or something like that. Although, trust me, I have had that thought of someone in the U.S. Marshal Service marrying someone who is in the WITSEC program, and then he or her gets involved because of that, and they all get in danger and blah, blah, blah. But so Paul is not speaking literally, obviously, but he's telling Holly, hey, it's not a great idea to become invested in these people. And so I'm just playing and playing with a way to get this out and to get the point across that, and we don't really know why Holly has this urge or this inkling or this motivation to take such an interest in Lexi. And I don't know that we necessarily need to say and set up a backstory where she was abused as a child, or she grew up in a super wealthy household and felt guilty and now she wants to give back or something. And I never really had any intention of making that a big part of it, and I don't know that I am going to change that. So one thing I did stumble on here after some research, you see that nightingale effect. You've heard of the Stockholm syndrome, where captives either they don't necessarily fall in love with, but sort of become enamored with their person who took them hostage or kidnapped them. So the kind of the reverse effect a little bit is the Nightingale. After Florence Nightingale, the people who she saved just, were super, not just grateful, but almost to a fault maybe, they just became enamored with them. Kind of the knight in shining armor, the damsel in distress, and then they fall in love and blah, blah, blah. So I'm trying to think about if Holly and Lexi are going to have some sort of relationship with that, kind of an unhealthy, where Lexi just looks to Holly for everything, thinks she's the best thing ever, fill in the blank with your cliche there. So that's kind of what that is, and whether, obviously I spell it out way too literally in this version, But whether or not that's something I'm going to keep, I don't know. Can't say at this point. The other thing is we're on page 7 and we're still in the 12 years ago part. So we're learning more about Holly, but are we really getting to know what her life is like? And that's, I don't know. I'm obviously still struggling with that, and maybe that's part of the problem. So there's day 122 in the can. Now I got to renumber all of my files because I made that mistake, but that's not your problem, that's mine. Thanks, as always. See you tomorrow.